Welcome to the Speak of the Devil's Untimed Down, our weekly supplement to our week's main show. I'm Brad Denny with 3TV.
I'm Joe Healy with DevilsDigest.com.
All right, Joe, the Sun Devils are a day away from kicking off a game against Colorado, a game in which, from the outside, looks like ASU should be in total control of, but there are some elements here that could make it for a kind of a trap game setting.
Yeah, this is a really good opportunity for ASU to show that it's a different team than it's shown in recent weeks. Uh, Bottom line, ASU needs to stop this nonsense of playing with its food and allowing teams to stick around and come back on them and failing to really start a game until the second quarter, maybe second half. All these things absolutely need to be cleaned up. The great thing is this is an opportunity to do that. This is not a game where, squeaking by with a victory is in any way, shape, or form acceptable. Because a lot of fans are now looking toward next week, not necessarily overlooking Colorado, but looking to next week. And if ASU comes out and wins a game by just a few points and scores in the 20s, that's not going to instill a lot of confidence in the likelihood of ASU retaining the Territorial Cup. So that's a big part of what's on the line this weekend too.
So one of the things that we should like to talk about here on Untimed Down, being a little bit closer to kickoff, is an injury update. Now that a couple of the official player availability reports have been published by the Big 12. And of course, all eyes are on wide receiver Jordyn Tyson. For weeks now, Kenny Dillingham has said this has kind of been the initial target for Jordyn to come back from that hamstring injury. On our Tuesday show, we talked about how he did participate in practice to a limited degree. Now, on Wednesday, I can say that he was out there doing a lot more out there. He practiced the entire session in pads as well. As Kenny said afterwards, he felt like he was about 85 to 90% of speed. And that's probably accurate. You could tell from what we've seen, his high level of play, that he wasn't quite there yet, but he was going through a lot of team and position work as well, running, doing some drills, cutting really well, making some ridiculous one-handed catches in the process. Now, of course, they do have a Thursday practice session that is closed to the media, so we don't know to what extent. But if you kind of maybe extrapolate a little bit from what we saw on Wednesday or on Tuesday into Wednesday, I would say the door is still open. But I would say when Friday's practice availability report and perhaps even Saturday's pregame, I expect him to probably either be questionable, and then on Saturday maybe a game time decision.
Yeah, and that's fine by me. It'd be great to see him get some reps against Colorado. Just kind of get his legs underneath them. ASU certainly should not need him. Colorado's got one of the worst run defenses in the country. ASU should be able to run the ball up and down the field and be highly successful. So I think, a safe, optimistic situation is he gets some time, maybe not a ton of reps, but just to kind of get any rust off to be 100% ready for next week. But obviously within that, you don't put too much workload on him to try to risk re-injuring him.
And one other injury note is, of course, after that scary moment on last Saturday, Rodney Bimage is out for this game. The word is that things are looking good. Of course, he walked off the field. Some of the players said he even did a little bit of a dance as he was walking off, just to try to show that he was doing okay with that stinger injury. But that of course is going to kind of reshuffle the cornerback depth behind the starters. Nyland Green's probably going to be that third corner there. And then true freshman Joseph Smith, who's been a real standout throughout his time here in camp, but he's going to now take on a more elevated role.
Yeah, just a really, really scary moment for Bimage there last week. Just hope, number one, that the health gets back into good working order and everything trends upward. And if he can return this season, that'd be wonderful.
All right, Joe. So as we did last week, we're going to dive into identify 3 Sun Devils each that we think are going to play critical roles in determining Saturday's outcome. Who's the guy in your spotlight?
First, for me, Raleek Brown on offense. ASU, from its running back positions, I believe has only had one 100-yard performance this season in Big 12 play. Raleek Brown's been kind of around the high 50s to 60 yards rushing. That's been a pretty consistent number for him over the last several weeks. Colorado has one of the bottom 5 rush defenses in the country, the worst power conference rush defense in the country. Raleek Brown should be able to have a field day against this defense. He should be able to go far beyond 100 yards rushing. And if he's effective doing that, then that takes a lot of that off of Jeff Sims. You don't have to have a situation. Again, that game against Iowa State was legendary, but he nearly carried the ball 30 times, and that's not something that you want to have happen to your quarterback.
For me, my first guy is cornerback Javen Robinson. We know that Keith Abney is one of the best in the conference, if not the country, and Omari Miller that is Colorado's top weapon offensively. They have a good young quarterback in Juju Lewis, and his nearly threw for over 300 yards in his last outing. So I think that that Abney Miller matchup is maybe going to cancel each other out. So I'm going to be curious to see how Javen's able to kind of handle that second threat. Colorado has a couple of other talented wide receivers. Now the numbers don't jump off the page, but they're certainly able to put a scare into a defense. Should they get a little bit of room. Javen's had a solid season. I don't think it's been as necessarily consistent as we saw from a season ago. So I think this is an opportunity for him to, in a game where the Colorado's probably going to be throwing the ball an awful lot, going to have to really kind of step up and make sure that wide receiver 2 doesn't jump off the page.
Funny you should mention Robinson, because my second guy to focus on is going to be his running mate, Keith Abney. As you mentioned, Marion Miller, by far the top offensive player for Colorado and probably the top performing player on the entire roster. Keith Abney's season right now is as good of an individual season from an ASU cornerback as I've really ever seen. If Abney is able to essentially shut down Miller or prevent him from being a big playmaker, that takes a huge part out of the Colorado offense. And then that's going to trickle down and affect that true freshman quarterback and cause him to have to think a little bit more, as opposed to just playing ball. So if Abney can lock Miller down like he's done to a lot of guys this year, that's going to help a lot.
My number 2 guy, punter Canyon Floyd. Punting has been an issue, of course, all season. And against West Virginia, Matt McKenzie came in and had a couple of short punts, I believe 31, 34 yards-ish, a little bit. Floyd then came in and watched a couple 50-yard bombs as well. So hopefully that quad is feeling better in practice this week. And some of the limited punts that we've seen, Floyd was really launching some really nice looking punts, good hang time, very good distance. And of course, you're heading up to Boulder with the benefit of the thin air up there. So you really should have an opportunity, if he continues that trajectory of feeling a little bit better and building off what we saw against West Virginia, to have the ability to flip the field if needed and really kind of pin back that struggling Colorado offense.
Third for me is Justin Watley, defensive line. ASU hasn't gotten as much, I'm sure, as it wanted or has wanted out of Clayton Smith and Prince Dorba, minus that TCU game for Dorba. Just the numbers have been kind of stagnant from what they've been year over year. Haven't really gotten that push to the next level of getting near, double-digit sacks, anything like that. But Justin Watley has really been, kind of the most ferocious defender off the edges there. We saw it last week. We've seen it multiple times this season. With Lewis out there again, that true freshman quarterback, you got to get him under pressure as best you can and really try to push him into mistake situations. And right now it seems like Watley is really being that guy in the defensive line who's getting in the backfield more consistently and effectively than anybody else.
My third guy is wide receiver Jaron Hamilton. I've spoken a lot about how this Sun Devil offense needs that balance. They've had some good balance over their 2 starts with Jeff Sims, and they had great balance in that second quarter against West Virginia and just kind of let it fizzle away in that second half. But we've seen guys from that wide receiver position, not named Jordyn Tyson, step up. Malik McClain, Jalen Moss, especially in these last couple weeks. I think Jaron Hamilton had a breakout game a few weeks ago in that win over Tech, but he's a guy that can really add such a unique dimension to the Sun Devil offense in terms of striking downfield, stretching that defense, which in turn I think will open things up even further for that run game and perhaps tight end Shimon Mateer. So I'd like to see him kind of get going a little bit. He's been kind of quiet these last couple weeks as Moss and McClain have really kind of come to the forefront there. We don't know what we might get from Jordyn Tyson, even if he is in the lineup. So I think, having a guy like Hamilton who can stretch that Colorado defense even further is going to be a big situation. Joe, we always go over our 3 keys to victory on our main podcast, which is available now anywhere you get your podcasts and here on YouTube. But you also have another key for the Sun Devils this Saturday evening.
Yeah, a big one here for me is just to stay focused, and that's on multiple levels. Number one, you can't look ahead to next week. You can't overlook Colorado and say, they've got 3 wins. They're really beat up. They got a lot of young players. They're not the team that they were last year. They don't have all the glitz and glamour and hype and people flashing watches at the crowd. You can't overlook that looking ahead to the Territorial Cup game. Beyond that, an added bit of focus that's necessary is just all the discourse that's been going on this week about Sam Leavitt. Will he stay? Will he go? That needs to be a bit of noise blocked out. Now, naturally, that hopefully is something that wouldn't really affect the team anyway, since he's not in the lineup right now, but it's the main talking point surrounding this team right now. So all things considered, you got to focus on the matter at hand. I mean, it would just be a really wonderful time for ASU to right the ship. Not that the ship is wrong, but there are just these little elements that are sticking to this team, that they're not shaking off some bad habits. Be a wonderful time to go out there and execute and make the game out of doubt at an early point. Hasn't really been the nature of this team, so it's something that, again, we'll believe it when we see it, and that's going to be reflected, I'm sure, in the scores that we predict here for the ball game. But focus is going to be huge this weekend.
Yeah, that focus is something that Kenny Dillingham, he was asked repeatedly in the media scrum here on Wednesday after practice, and he just kept going back, I'm focused on Colorado. I'm focused on Colorado. Mentioned that, of course, that he's been talking to Sam and that he loves Sam and all that stuff, and their relationship remains good. But he just said that he and the team are strictly focused on Colorado, and that's easier said than done. So we'll see exactly how that plays out. Before we dive into a conversation with offensive line coach Saga Tuitele, Joe, we had I think for the first time in a while, and we don't ever, share our predictions with each other before we start recording the show, but we had the same final score prediction, ASU 27-20 over Colorado. And this is our time in the Untimed Down, where we either stand by it or maybe revise after some information over the last few days. Are you standing pat?
Yeah, I'll stick with it. There's part of me that thinks ASU can do much better than the predicted score. What was it, 27-20, if I'm not mistaken? Mm-hmm. But until I see this team, really put a team away and not have quarters where things slip away, that's gonna stick with that close, relatively low scoring game.
Yeah, me too. I'm sticking with 27-20. I think the Sun Devils are the better team. I think they're going to be in control, kind of like similar to West Virginia. But there's just that until they are able to kind of, as you say, kind of put a team away, step on the throat, and really kind of exert their will. One score games are going to be what I think they're going to be stuck in that purgatory. Now they've been very good in those one score games, 10-1 record over the last since the start of 2024 in games of 7 points or less. So got to continue with the script. 27-20 Sun Devils. And before I let you go on the Untimed Down, after Wednesday's practice, I caught up with offensive line coach Saga Tuitele, get his thoughts on the state of the offensive line and how they've handled this season's adversity. All right, so another win against West Virginia, against a pretty good rush defense. When you were kind of looking back in the film, what kind of jumped out to you about the line play against the Mountaineers?
We could have done a little bit more. We made some just we weren't on the same page on a couple of those things, and that could have freed up Kanye and Malik and so. But we did enough to win the game. I thought the pass protection was good. Other than we had the first one, was a little wonky, but they did a good job of just being on the same page and in the protection wise. And just wish we had a couple plays that we would have executed better in the run game as far as communication and tracks and stuff.
Yeah, obviously Sam and Jeff are kind of similar quarterbacks, guys who like to move around a little bit. But is there any changes or impact in terms of just their play styles and with how maybe the pass protection sets up?
No, it's just the same. You know that we just got to give them a little bit of time, and if anything breaks down, they can help us and get themselves out of the situation. And whether it's a coverage or whether it's a guy losing on a one-on-one, they're both very similar. We got all the protections, and they both can handle it. They both, Jeff does a great job of putting us in the correct direction, just like Sam did. So, they're really, I think Coach Aguero's done a great job with those guys, and just really putting them on the same page. And whether it's the command, whether it's the control of the huddle or just the communication, that Jeff has done a great job, just as Sam did.
This group has obviously faced a lot of adversity. A lot of guys, getting injured. Ben being out, and some younger guys having to step up. Yeah. Overall, just kind of overall in the nature of this team overcoming adversity. How have you seen your group kind of overcome the adversity throughout the course of the season?
Like you said, it's just guys playing different positions. Guys, getting beat out, and then being able to stay in it and come in and help us at different times of the games. And sometimes your role as a starter changes, and sometimes your role as a backup changes. But the thing I like them that they're all prepared, and then they're all, when they get the opportunity, they make the most of it. So I do like that that they all know their role, and they all know they're important, and that at some point we're going to need them. And I do like rotating those guys in, and so it's fun to get to see them cheer for each other, even though they're competing for each other. It's just fun to see them high-fiving and just getting excited for each other on the sideline.
Is there maybe a silver lining that just, with some of the injuries and some of the younger guys maybe playing a little bit earlier than, ideally, that just maybe helps for, kind of set the stage for, 2026 and beyond?
And I'm not even thinking about that. I'm just trying to get to the next day. But like guys are improving, and guys are different, have different strengths. Like Chimedo Obibo has a different strength than Makai Stewart, and Kai Scott's different from Makua Pule, and Makua is different from Wade Helton. They all have different strengths, and try to play to it, and they all work their tails off, and we trust them when we get out there. So, all right, we'll roll with them, and they feel it too, and whoever's got the hot hand is going to stay, and they understand it. Like, oh yeah, he's balling, coach. I remember looking one of them on the sideline and saying, coach, he's balling, he's feeling it. Let him go.
And so obviously, last year not a ton of injuries, and you guys cruised to the conference title. This year, a lot of adversity, but you guys are still very much in the thick of things. 10-win season, still very much in that grasp. Kind of like collectively, where do you think what you've learned about the character of this group of 2025 Sun Devils?
Well, they just, like I said, they respond, and they take everything in stride. The one thing they both have is they love their teammates, they love the school, and they play hard. And so this team, they learn from their mistakes. They've got good thick skin. When I jump on them, and they pull together. And if you remember last year, it was a grind too until that last game in the championship game. So it's the same. It's the love of the grind and the love of the work is what drives these guys, and we do it. It's not just words on the wall. We have more fun working harder than anybody in the country, and you have to. These kids do it. They show it how they play.
And going up to face a Colorado defense that has had some struggles over the course of the season, but still some very talented players at all three levels. What kind of jumps out about what they like to do and some of the things that your group's going to have to do to have success? Yeah,
we don't really look at the numbers, but we just look at the film. They're well coached. They play violent. They play hard. It's just they run into some bad lucks where it's a missed tackle here and this and that. So they're in the right spot. They've got a good, well-coached D-line. They're thick inside. They're athletic and explosive on the outside. And so they're going to present a challenge, and they move, and then they stun, and you can't really tell when they're moving and stunning and blitzing. So they do a good job. The linebackers do a great job of kind of triggering on the run game, and sometimes bluffing when they're blitzing and stuff like that. So they do a great job. They're in the right spot, and just sometimes you're getting some bad luck and you miss a tackle here or there, or someone makes a play. So I just think they've have a handful of bad luck plays on the defensive side, or whether their record, their numbers and their record would be different. But really good, really talented, just like everybody in this league, man. They got some skill.